It just does not work anymore. So to understand the culture of organizations now, we need to understand where the mindset is coming from. And this generation has learned to thrive on communication, collaboration, and a sense of community. If we think about how people have changed over the last 50 years, think back to the 1970s. And if you can. I was born in 1969, so I remember the 70s. I was a kid, but I remember the 70s. I also remember the first video game that came out in 1974 called Pong. And I remember how glued to this game we all were. And it was just a dot that went back and forth on the screen between two paddles, and you had to stop it from going off the screen. Now, if we think about the advancement over the last 50 years in terms of digital gaming, internet, mobile internet, social networks, and so on, there's a lot of, let's say, electronic influence on our behavior, and it's definitely changed who we are. And there's become a huge differentiation between what we call the digital natives and the digital migrants. So I would be classified as a digital migrant. Hopefully, I learned how to be a good digital native, even though technically I'm a digital migrant. But there's a new class of people that represents the majority of our young and able workforce right now, and those are the digital migrants. And they have a different mindset, and they also have a different understanding of what it means to be engaged. So we're going to explore this a little bit. Jane McGonigal wrote a book called Reality is Broken, and she talks about gamers as these super empowered, hopeful individuals who believe they can change the world, but they don't believe it in the real world. She says this thing that I just love at the bottom of the screen, that is, gamers use games to escape from everything that is broken in the real world and everything that is not satisfying about real life. Games are an escape. And we have an entire generation of people now that have grown up understanding that they can escape the real world when it's boring or unsatisfying. Now, that's kind of, I don't know, interesting. So let's explore this a little bit. What Jane writes in the book, and this book is from 2011, so these numbers have changed dramatically now. So if you look at the average time spent playing video games for a person up to age 21, it's about 10,000 hours. If you look at the average time spent in school, middle and high school, up to graduation of high school, depending on the country, it's about 10,000 hours. So we've got a parallel learning system that unfortunately is more engaging, more rewarding, and more fun than the education system. What are these people learning? It's a good question. What do they learn from that education system? Also, when Jane wrote the book, the average age of gamers globally was about 30 years old. Today it's 32 years old. So the majority of our young and able workforce, the thinkers that we need to be an intelligent workforce now, not just the non-thinking hands, they represent the majority of our workforce. Do they find work as engaging as the games and social networks that they grew up with? Good question. These are digital natives. If we look at the time, now this is 2011 when Jane wrote this, that 6.3 hours per week is the average amount of time that people spend on games. For those under 18, twice as much. Now, if you add in social media to this, you've got people that are spending 30, 40 hours a week on things parallel to work, which is very interesting, and sometimes at work, which is also very interesting. So if we think about this, these are alarming numbers, but there is hope. Play is nature's learning engine. Games allow us to learn, and all we really need to do is repackage into the way that our new generation's brains are wired, so that they react the same way. Now, one of the things that games bring into our brain is this concept of curiosity and seeking. So when we're playing a game or when we're in social networks and so on, we're looking for something. We're curious. We want to find that cool meme, or we want to win and save the princess or win the war or whatever. And that creates a lot of stuff in our brain that we like and we want more of it. And what creates that liking and wanting is a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is the same neurotransmitter that gets released in our brain when we drink coffee, have sugar, eat chocolate, snort cocaine, cocaine, drink alcohol, and so on. So it's very addictive because we like it and we want more. And so that is really, it's driving the biology of our brain, the way we're engaged externally. Now, I asked the question, what are these people learning? People that grow up in games. And one of the things that's really interesting is they learn some things that don't necessarily fit with the business environment. So they learn blissful productivity. They enjoy the process. They enjoy doing their work. I mean, they're actually working in the game to try not to die and to save the princess, win the war, save the world, whatever. But they're doing it in a way that's fun, which brings out a new level of engagement. They want to do this. It also creates a thing called urgent optimism. They believe that it's possible, and they have to get it done right away. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to win this thing, I'm going to win this match, I'm going to win the race, I'm going to win the tank war, or whatever. And that brings us to epic meaning, which is they're really working on these kind of big global tasks. It's not just like, hey, I need to make some photocopies and run this across the office to somebody else for a stamp and a signature. These people are working on epic things. They're saving the world, saving the princess, winning the war, and so on. And the fourth thing that comes out of it is what we call social fabric. They're working together, they're collaborating, they're trusting each other with a group task. And a lot of these games are designed for teamwork. And I'll tell a quick little story, aware of the time. Tell a quick little story. When me and my younger son moved back to Moscow, my older son was in the US Navy, and we moved back to Moscow in 2015. And my younger son got back into playing video games on the PlayStation 4. And one morning, and this my younger son, to wake him up early in the morning was like waking the dead usually. It's very difficult to get him out of bed. 16 years old, and one morning I got up for work, and it was 5:30 in the morning, and he was already up with a cup of coffee playing a video game. And I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I agreed with my team, this was the time that we could all play. And I said, well, 5:30 in the morning, that's a little weird, where are they? And he said, well, one of them is in Canada and the other one is in Hong Kong. That's why we had to get together at this time, I'm in the middle. So very interesting, but this is a level of social fabric and collaboration that was going across multiple countries at the same time, multiple time zones, all to play a game. Now, to try and get that kind of collaboration in a workplace is quite difficult. And if we think about the difference between games and work, boy, in games we've got structured experiences, we're trusted with some epic mission or an inspiring story, we're ready to work with others to achieve common goals, we get constant feedback, positive or negative, and we're encouraged to take chances and try new things. If I die, I usually get another life. It's usually not the end of the game on the first death, let's say. Now, if we compare that to a work environment, work is terribly uninteresting for us right now, right? It's often unstructured. It's often you're not trusted with anything until you've proven it time and time again. There's no epic mission there. There are often hostile work environments. The feedback is usually lagging and reward cycles are slow, and we're encouraged to follow the rules and not ever think outside of the box. We just need the non-thinking hands to do the work. And this model is clearly broken, and it doesn't work if we want to manage modern businesses, especially in the digital age. And the other thing that we know is that the old models of how we develop corporate culture definitely don't work anymore. So the old model of building a framework of acceptable behaviors and creating rules and how we measure those acceptable behaviors and creating a control system and giving people feedback and thinking that that's going to get everybody to behave just beautifully together and collaborate and trust each other and so on, well, that just doesn't work anymore. It just does not work anymore. So to understand the culture of organizations now, we need to understand where the mindset is coming from. And this generation has learned to thrive on communication, collaboration, and a sense of community. So this is dramatic. This is dramatically different from most of the work environments that we see on the planet today. So tech companies are usually quite ahead, B2C companies are ahead of others, but this is dramatically different from most companies on the planet today if we say that corporate culture should thrive on communication, collaboration, and community. Tough, very tough.